Hello and welcome to our next chapter in English 75A. Today we'll be talking about John Smith. I am your host and academic influencer, Sean Connelly. Check me out on Instagram. Actually, don't. Now, I meant to get this up a little bit earlier so you'd have time to think about it and maybe, incorporate some of this into your post that's due on Wednesday. If you want to turn it in a little bit late, Thursday or so, that's fine. I'm still trying to get the rhythm right. Like I said, I did want to get it out earlier, but yesterday was actually my birthday, and because of that special day, I didn't get around to it. But yeah, don't worry about it. You didn't know, so don't feel bad. You're all dead to me, every single one. But anyway, wanted to get a few points out for discussion post 3. I'm asking you to think about, the Spanish explorers and also about John Smith, who writes in a way that makes us think about adventure genres and also knightly romances as were popular in the Middle Ages. Now, I also want to take your focus to just some general ideas regarding how you can approach these journals. Now, I would like you to give your best shot in focusing on these topics, but sometimes people feel a little bit hesitant because they're not sure their answer is right. There's no right or wrong answer. I want these to be speculative. I want people to just throw stuff at the wall and see what happens. Um, and if you think it's out there, just say maybe it's this, or I suppose we could look at it like, or one way of viewing it could be. Now, I say this because when we're talking about analyzing or interpreting literature, interpretations are not true or false, okay? They're either well supported with evidence and reasoning from the text, or they're poorly supported. So it's a very gray area, and you can justify almost anything if you can find the support for it when you're looking at literature or other cultural artifacts. Now, um, I also want you to use the journals to find a way in which you can talk about certain parts of the journals that really moved you, or you thought got a point across in a very effective way, or maybe something that you found confusing, or you didn't understand its purpose or how it fit in with larger structural elements. That's great too. I want us to be picking these things apart. That's really the fun of literature as far as I'm concerned. And also putting your own questions in at the end is also really, really important, because I think we need to keep engaging with the text by putting our own experience and our own ways of reading it back into it. That's a really, really crucial part. All right. Of course, today we'll be looking at John Smith. Here he is cutting quite the pose. I think 17th century is the century of the fancy pants. Very well groomed, looking like a noble, even though he was of common birth, growing up on a farm. Sporting quite the hipster mustache and beard. I think he would look fine hanging out anywhere in Brooklyn or in Silver Lake today. What do we need to know about him? He didn't like growing up on the farm, and as soon as he got his chance, he decided to work as a mercenary and a privateer. A mercenary is basically a soldier for hire. They're not doing it for a nation, they're not doing it for God, they're doing it for money. And a privateer is somebody like that too, but they are working basically as a mercenary on a ship of war. So that was his call to adventure. That was his way to escape his rural agricultural childhood, which apparently bored him to tears at points. Now, he makes his name in kind of the popular imagination in England because he did explore a lot. Even before he became an official explorer, he fought in various wars on the European continent. He was also an adventurer, and liked to talk about his stories as adventures. And you'll notice certain features of adventure genre pivoting through and also punctuating his tales. And he liked making them stories. These are not dispassionate, objective accounts by any means, but instead, they're a certain kind of heroic tale with, guess who, John Smith as the hero in every one. And in often places, or many different places in these texts, he's the one who is controlling the narrative, and people aren't really around to dispute his claims. Now, he did participate in the era of English exploration. Um, and remember, this is a merchant driven enterprise. Um, Remember, this is the time in which the merchant class, a form of the middle class and upper middle class, is really rising in stature. It's filling a need that the crown cannot. We have the beginning of the capitalist system coming into place. And these merchant organizations like Massachusetts Bay Company, for example, Virginia Company, they want to increase their profits. And that's done through expanding access to resources and also land, raw goods, and also finished goods. And he was also a really, really important figure in the establishing of the Jamestown colony in Virginia. Now, this colony was named after King James. It was King James the First. Yeah, it's got to be King James the First, because he's the first Stuart. If you're going to take Britlet, you might want to know this mnemonic device: James, Charles, Charles, James. That's the way to remember the Stuart names. That's the beginning and end of that family line in the English monarchy. So, it was named after King James, and it was a successful foray for a year or two, but it vanished. All the people were gone when a supply ship came later on to meet with them, take raw materials from, give them more supplies, etc. And it's still a mystery to this day what happened to it. And finally, John Smith, as far as his personality goes, was a bit of a hothead. He had bursts of anger and entitlement that made him very difficult to work with. He's one of those guys in the room who always thought he knew what was the best way to do things, and got really upset if he wasn't getting the attention, or if he wasn't automatically assumed to be the best opinion in the room. Now, how does this relate to the reading that we have? Well, a lot of you know the Pocahontas story and its various incarnations. It's been a really important part of kind of early settler and explorer folklore and history for both American history and English history. Now, the challenge with that is the whole story that he puts in about Pocahontas saving him, which he puts into his general history of Virginia, it does not appear until 7 years after Pocahontas has died. So nobody can dispute the story, because nobody is alive to hear it. So that's kind of like that one friend that you have that's a big bragger, and he's always got these amazing tales of all these great things he did and how all these women were falling over him, but nobody ever sees it go down, right? Oh yeah, I met this girl and she was so cool, and she was letting me drive, her brand new Escalade, and she let me have it for the whole weekend, but then she had to take it back, and man, she moved to Canada. But she was so awesome. It's that kind of stuff. Spinning the big tales where he's always the hero, and his his role as an action hero is also, put on big display here as well. Um, there's a point at which he is actually, in his earlier years, attributed to having defeated 3 Turks in the Ottoman War, single-handedly beheading them with his own sword. And we'll get to that in just a second. Let me find that picture for you. Okay, moving right along. We'll notice right here, we've got John Smith's crest. And what figures prominently into it? Well, we've got a helm, and we also have the heads of the 3 Turks that he supposedly beheaded in single combat when he was working as a mercenary in the Ottoman Wars. So, great story. There's some historical basis to it, but it's still a little bit on the iffy side. Now, keep in mind that if he really did do this, he certainly didn't keep quiet about it. He loved telling this story. In fact, he even named a part of Massachusetts 3 Turks to help memorialize this particular heroic action. He didn't want anybody to forget his story. We all have that friend who's like that. And if you look at general history, you're going to notice a lot of those same heroic genre features in it. There's one point when they are attacked by natives, and he uses his own interpreter, the native that's working with him, as a buckler. And buckler here doesn't mean a non-alcoholic beer. It's a circular shield. He's using his ally and his interpreter from the native population as a human shield. Now that's some pretty messed up Total Recall stuff there. Don't know what scene that I'm referring to, I can post it for you. But it's over the top and ridiculous, and I don't know if I'd want to work for him under those circumstances. And we've seen this map before, but here's a good place to remind ourselves of it. Notice he was interested in having people understand the land, but he was also very, very invested in people understanding him as an essential part of the narrative of this new land. That he came, he mapped it out, and that he also was the one who was able to bring this information back. So the point here is that the narrative cannot really take place without the narrative of John Smith being the person who makes it all possible. This rugged individualism, the explorer as a person who can come from anywhere, from any walk of life, and tame these new lands and the peoples that are in there as well. And we do, of course, see once again that imagery of the Native American as a fetishized and kind of exoticized being in the map. That's a huge part of the appeal. And up in the left corner, you see Powhatan, who is the chief who basically invites John Smith into his particular tribe. Now, John Smith goes through a very long passage where he talks about people dancing around and using devilish tones and chants and, bathing their bodies in red and black paints. And what he describes as what might be, an execution ceremony, many historians think was just an induction ceremony. Welcome to the tribe. We're glad to have you here. Of course, I'm the king. You and Jamestown will be under our jurisdiction, but here we are. John Smith, not knowing native languages and not having his interpreter there, didn't really know what was going on. So lots of historians think Pocahontas did not necessarily save him. She was just there. But, name one heroic story that doesn't